And hello everyone, welcome back to another Meteor.js tutorial. In the previous tutorial we took a look at actually implementing and creating our post. Sorry for that flashbang. So here if I say create post, I go this is a new one, say post. If we go to our compass, why is everything light mode? Gee whiz, we refresh it, then you see this is a new one. However, we currently have an issue where even though we have added that, we don't see it here. So in this tutorial, I'll show you how we can implement a pretty much cover everything fetch method, as well as showing what we have just posted. So let's first start with the cover everything fetch method. So currently one of our biggest issues is going to be every time we want to fetch something, because we're not using trackers, we're going to have to write a custom fetch method for each and every page. And I feel that is not it's not nice. I don't want to do that. No developer wants to spend at least like 100 hours of their 300-hour project just writing out fetch data. It's not fun. We're going to skip through all of that by creating a central fetch method that will fetch all of the data for us how we ask for it, so we don't have to ever create another fetch one except for very specific scenarios. Alright, so let's jump onto it. So here in API, utils, we're going to create a new folder called methods. We're going to call this set.ts, get.ts, and then index.ts, and index will of course import get as well as set. Need to make sure that you remember to go to your startup imports and just import it right here, utils. Okay, now that we're here inside of get, we want to create a get method. So Meteor, import that, methods, create your object, and take note, this is an oopsie on my side. I did not name this quite correct to how we follow the course. So I want you to name it correctly if you want to. But in this case, it was just not named correctly, and changing it now will change up the whole script a little bit. So I'm going to keep it as is. Util methods dot find collection. How you might want to name it is get dot util dot find collection, or find data, or find anything. That's pretty much how you want to name it. I just accidentally did not do that in the script. We'll go async, and this will be a function, and this will pretty much just query the database for us. So we'll need a couple things. So let's copy this, go to our models, export interface method model, and again make sure this is Pascal case. Now first thing we want to do is we want to extend this, so extend to method search model. This right here is from this types folder. There you go, selector, options, and only one. It just includes a couple of MongoDB default selectors for us, so we don't have to specify them when we create our model or our interface. Alright, then here we just need to specify a couple of things. First of all, the collection we want to query. So collection, and here we just go available collection name. So we just specify one of these and it will know what we're talking about. Again, now we don't have to remember what these are called because hey, we just set them right here. They're in an enum. Makes our life much easier as a developer. Include deleted. So by default, we do not want to include deleted items. When we say find, just exclude all deleted items, because why should we provide them? If you remove your deleted items from the database, this is not needed. But if you just mark your items as deleted, then I recommend having this. And it will be a boolean, but it's an optional field. And then count, also optional, is a boolean, and this will return the number of items instead of the items themselves. And you might just want to add some documentation for this one as well. Here we go. And instead of this get here, we can specify our brackets and then method, util methods, there we go. And of course, just specify everything. Now first we want to assign these collections, which is an available collection name, to an actual collection. So const collection map, because they're not actually a collection, so it makes it a little difficult. So here we specify available collection names dot post, and this will be assigned to post collection. So that's pretty much all we're going to be doing. We're going to assign this word to this bracket here. If we go and open up our node here, and I were to say const x is equal to, or c, that's fine. And we were to specify these right here and say test and make that 2. If we put out c, it's just going to be test. Because if we were to just do this, JavaScript won't really know what to do with this, neither with TypeScript. So it's just wondering, why are you putting a variable here? But if we do this, we can specify a variable within these brackets. And we'll do this for each and every one of them. So user profile collection, and then posts, or not posts, I mean users. And this will be of meteor.users. So you know what collection to query and get data from, because all collections in Meteor have the exact same structure. So doing this just makes our life easier. Next up, we'll go const collection instance is equal to the collection map, and then we specify in brackets the collection. So this will be something like posts, and then we'll go, okay, so this is post, so it's post collection, and so on. And this be collection map, my bad. There we go. So collection map, and we specify this, which will then trigger this part right here and find that. And this is a one-time write thing, so this is probably the most complicated part of this whole course. So if this kind of scares you, don't worry too much. It's literally the most difficult part of the whole thing. And here we can go if not collection instance. So if we could not find a collection in here, that means the collection that passed here does not exist. So the database, or the collection in that database, just simply does not exist. Return internal server error, or a not found error, whichever you prefer. Collection provided does not exist. Then we want to start writing our MongoDB query. So let query, which is of type MongoDB selector. Take a look at it. It's just this right here. It's a string, either the mongo.selector or the object ID. So the underscore ID will be the selector, and this is the one we pass in here, so that will be the item ID or whatnot. Same thing that we do here. If we go to set, we usually find the user here, or even if we go to this user profile, and we look for, users, my bad, and we look here, we try and search for that specific username. It's the same thing that we do here. So that is the selector pretty much that we're defining right now. We then have $or, and this will contain an array that says deleted, false, or deleted should simply not exist. So this will go, okay, find, let's say they pass in the post ID here, right? So it says, hey, find the post ID, but only if if it's not deleted, or it does not have a deleted field, either or. However, we should take note that the selector may actually be an object, because currently we are assuming it's a string. But if it's an object, we want to handle it slightly differently. I'm going to copy this, and in here I'm going to go if type of selector, if it is actually an object, then we want to handle it as it's an object. So we say query is then equal to, and I'm going to paste that there. And in here, instead of specifying the ID, we instead specify $and. Because now we want to specify these things should be pretty much the same, or they should both be taken into account. So then we have our or here. So let's just go like this. We have our or, which we can pass in up here. And then of course our selector. Otherwise, you could also go here and just say selector. You don't have to spread it out. I just like spreading it out here because it makes it slightly more readable if you have to quickly glance over it to get an answer. Alright, then now that we pretty much have checked the selector, we also need to check, do they only want one item or do they want multiple? So if only one, so if they only want one item, they want to say const res is equal to await collection instance dot find one async, and then if include deleted, so if they want the deleted to be included, just specify the whole selector. Otherwise, specify the query we just defined up here, so we can still use that same query. We then also specify a couple of options, so any options passed in to our item here, so these options here. So this will be only specific fields or something like that. And then because it might complain, we just say transform undefined. If yours complain that you have it transformed here, just remove it. Then here you'll notice we get a little red error here because this is the difference in type between Meteor stuff and our stuff. So because we have the Meteor user here, it does not support everything we have here, TypeScript wise. So here we can just specify as Mongo collection, Mongo import that dot collection, and we just specify the user profile model in both. And it will fix the error because it will force it to look like the user profile model instead of the user model in terms of the collection is trying to fetch data from. And in here we just return, since they only wanted one, we return res. Next up we can check, did they ask for a count? So pretty much if you pass in only one and you pass in count, you'll only receive like one full item instead of the actual count. So you need to be careful of that. You can maybe do a check, like say if only one and count, return client content error, can only return one or count not both, something like that, if you want to do that extra check. But anyways, if count, then we want to do a const res is equal to await collection instance dot find, and you specify or include deleted, which will then do the selector, otherwise the query, because the query excludes deleted. That's all the query is really there for, is just to exclude the deleted from the result. And we pass in the options we might have requested, and then we just say dot count async, which will count the number of items in the database that match that description. And then we return res. And then finally, let me copy that. This is if they're not just searching for one and they're not just looking for a count. Then here we just do everything the same, but instead of count, we say fetch async. And there we go. This will be our global search. So we will never even have to touch this again except for updating our collection map here. So this is the nice part about this, is just you don't have to worry now. All of your searching stuff will be done for you. Alright, so now let's actually use this, which we just created. So let's go to our import, our UI, our browse page, and then index. Now we want to create a method to fetch our data. So const fetch post. This will be an asynchronous function. I want to specify a couple of things. First of all, how many should we skip? This will be 0. And how many should we get? Limit. This will be 10. You could change that depending on what you prefer. Then here we go, const find data is equal, and let's actually put this in a try just to be safe. Const find data, which of type method util methods, and there we go, autocomplete. And I just want to copy this right here. I do not like typing long things. Meteor import that dot call async, pass that in and throw in a wait here. Then here with the find data, we just specify the collection, and this will be of available collection names dot posts. So we want to search the posts. The selector would just be nothing. So we want all of the posts we can currently get, but we want to limit it. So we go to options and we specify a limit, which will be the limit we actually pass in right here, as well as the skip. Well, we need to check if skip is more than 0, then skip -1. Otherwise, just skip. And we times that by the limit. We can then also sort it to make sure we get the latest first. So created at, and we just say -1. This will make sure that those who are created last shows up first, so the newest. But take note, we don't want all of the fields, because we're going to be fetching a lot of data, and when this scales, we do not want to fetch all of the fields in the post model, because the post model might grow, and the more it grows, the more fields will be fetched, and that could cause a lot of performance issues. So we want to specify interface, and then we're going to use this browse page here again. So mini, then the page name, then what we're doing, what we're configuring here. So post model. Then we just say extends, and we specify pick. This means we're only going to pick a couple things from the post model to actually load in. So we say post model, and we specify the underscore ID, created at, the text, and the user ID. And then we just specify empty brackets. So this will fetch everything from the post model except the ID, including the ID, created at, text, and user ID. But it will not fetch the deleted or deleted at. And this includes for any new data you add to the post model. So if your post model gets randomly 30 plus extra fields added to it, this will prevent all of those 30 plus fields from being sent to the front end. Because we don't need all 30 plus, we only need some of them. Who created it, the text, when was it created, and the ID will be provided whether we specify it or not. Then we can just specify const mini. I'm going to just copy this, paste this here, change that big M to a small m, and from model to fields. And this will pretty much just be take all of this, paste it here, and just specify 1. Because this specifies TypeScript what we're getting, and this actually specifies MongoDB what we're getting. So this is a TypeScript only thing, this is the actual thing that changes things. So then here in our options, we can just say fields, mini, and then we pass in those fields, meaning it will only give us these ones right here. Then here with this await, we go const res, and this res will be of type mini browse page post model. Then we return res. And if something bad happens, we say error response error as meteor.error could not get posts. And then at the end, we just return an empty array if nothing got returned. Now we also want to save these posts inside of a state. So use state posts, make it an empty array by default, and then just say mini browse page post model as an array. Then here with the res, we just also go set post res. You could do this outside and just make sure this is also an array. This is the one downside, you will need to specify this type here. So you'll need to kind of read this and figure out what it is on your own. That's the only downside of using this method right here. Anyways, what I was talking about is this set post. You can also use this outside where you actually call this fetch post because we're returning the value. So if you don't want to set it in here, you could set it outside. And in here, just make sure to specify your find data. Otherwise, you will not find any data. So then here we go and say const fetch data, which is an asynchronous function. And this fetch data will actually, let's also put a loader in here. Why not? Use state loading. Let's go through. And this fetch data will actually call all of the fetching and set up everything for us. So set loading. And here we also want to specify if there should actually be a loader being displayed. This is an optional field because you might always want to display loader. But I put it in here because there's a lot of times where you just simply don't. Maybe you're just fetching data, but you don't want to refresh the whole page. You don't want to put a loader in front of the user. So you just say silent, and that is a boolean. And we say not silent. So if we specify it needs to be silent, then we will set the loading to false from the get-go. If we don't specify that it should be silent, then it will show the loader from the start. Then again, just set loading to false at the end, in case we set it to true up here. Then you go const post res, and that will be equal to await fetch posts. There we go. Now this fetch data we should actually call in a use effect. So on page render, so the first render, we just call this. Should keep this empty, otherwise it will call this too often. And this will automatically call our fetch posts for us, so we don't have to worry about that. Then you can also just make sure if loading return loading outlined. There we go. Now we can make sure it actually fetched those data by going console.log posts. And we take a look at our console. We get two arrays, or two items in an array. Not that. Here we go. And as you can see, we get everything that is in the database currently. It will of course limit it if there is more items in the database. We can actually also make sure that that loader is working if you ever need to make sure it's working by going to your network tab. And if you can't open this console, just right click and say inspect. Anyways, then here you go to your network tab. And if you want to make sure that loader is working, just set the throttling to like 3G or something. And then let's go refresh. It's going to be really slow. And there we get a little loader, and here it loads it. So if you want to make sure that loader works, just set your data to be really slow. Anyways, we're not worried about that at the moment. So now we do get the posts, and they're in the form of an array looking like the object we wanted. So we can actually remove all of these postcards and go posts.map, and we get every post in this loop that we're going through. And I'm just going to return a postcard for this post. And now we get 2 of them, still have their dummy data, but we get the 2 because we got 2 items from this map. Now you can pass in a couple things. First of all, the key, otherwise we're going to get these complaints from our console that says, hey, each thing needs a unique key prop, I don't really care about it, but go to post._id. Now that complaint will disappear if I do a refresh. So in case you get that, that's all you need to do. Now we need to pass in the post itself to just display some of the data. So if we go to postcard, and while we're at it, let's export this because we'll need that. Now we go to this postcard. In our interface, we can say post is of type this right here because that's what the parent gets. Now here we can just specify, hey, we want this post data. And if you scroll down, with the typography, we can go and specify post.text instead. And here with the date, we can specify post.createAt. Now if we refresh, my bad, let me just go here and pass in post. Okay, now if it does a refresh, we get this is a new one and yabba dabba do. If we create a post and say hello world, IE should be at the top. So if you say post, we refresh, it is at the top. Now you might notice it's not fun if you go to something like X, it will auto refresh when you post and things like that. So you might want to do that here as well. In that case, you can go here to components and create, and you go fetch parent data, which is an optional one because we might not pass it in wherever we go. And we want to specify a specific type for this called fetch data type because we will be using this a lot. So if we go to our browse page, then up here, we can just specify export type fetch data type. This will be, and we go here, of silent, which is a boolean, so an optional silent. And it will return us a promise saying we need to await it of void. So we'll not take any data from it, but it is something we need to await. And of course, you can add some documentation if you want. Now that we have that, we can go here and just import it because there's a lot of components that might use the same thing. Then now that we have this fetch parent data, here if a post was created, then right before we set show to false, we can go if this function was actually provided to us and just make sure to import it here. So if this was actually provided and it's not undefined, call it and just make sure to await. And you might want to specify silent as well because you don't want to display loader when you fetch the data because it just looks nice if you don't. So here we can go put some data here, and we actually don't post or pass anything in. So let's go to the browse page, and here where we have our create post, we just say fetch parent data and we just pass in fetch data. Okay, now if we do one of them, we say post. There it goes, immediately there. Alternatively, you could, because they're posting it, put it inside of a use state and it display their use state new value. But when they post, they might want to see all of the other new posts that also happened just then. So it depends on how you prefer to implement it. I feel this is just to do 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course, if you want to show the loader, you can just remove that true there. Now, if I were to go here and say like that, we can't really see it because it's so fast, but it showed a little loader there. Depending on how much data you're fetching, it could show a much longer loader. Also depending on if they have fast internet speeds, as I showed earlier. Alright, so now let's actually make sure we know who this guy actually is, because it's not Jack. We know Jack didn't post this. So we need to make sure we get who actually posted this. So what we want to do is go to browse page, and underneath fetch post, we want to go const fetch post users. So we want to fetch the users for the posts. And here we have an asynchronous function that takes in the user IDs that we need to fetch. which will be an array of strings. Then I'm going to copy this. I do not want to type out everything again. Gotta paste that there. Also, you might want to specify the users. And by doing that, we can also specify how they should look. So let's go export interface mini, and let me just copy this actually. Change that to user. And this extends user model. And we just want to specify a couple things. This includes the underscore ID, the username, and my bad, this isn't actually the user profile. Too much coding for a day. Okay, so ID, username, as well as the user ID, so who this actually is, and the photo. So there's their profile photo. Currently there is no profile photo, but we fetch it anyways because we know we're going to use it later on. And of course we can create our const. I'm going to copy that and just specify user. Then I am going to copy these 4 fields and just paste them here. Okay, then here we can create our user. So use state user profiles, and we can just put an empty array there and then specify they should look like mini user, and this should not be user, this should be user profile. There we go. And we specify an array. There we go. So now everything is good. Down here where we fetch the users, we now want to specify the user profile. And with the selector, we want to specify where the user ID is in the user IDs we pass in. So this will check if this value is in this array. And then for options, we're not going to limit or skip or sort. We are just going to pass in the mini user profile fields. So we don't fetch all of the data of all of the users. Then here we can say set user profiles and then just specify this is of type mini user profile model. And then here cannot get users. Cool. As fast as that, now we can go down here, await this, but it needs to get the user ID. So we go postres.map and we can just go p.userid. So the users who actually made these posts. And as simple as that, we will now fetch all of the users that has the user IDs passed in here. Now that we have the users, we can actually pass them down into our post card. So first thing we want to do is first get the post user. So const post user is equal to user profiles dot find, and we find where the user profile dot user ID is the same as the post dot user ID. But we want to make sure if we do not get the post user, then we don't really want to show the post, because who does this post belong to? Is it maybe a malicious post that was created by someone that does not want to be identified? In that case, we don't want to show it. We don't want to show it if we don't have all the information. So if not post user, so we can't find that user, just return null, because we can't find the user, so why should we display them? Don't show the post. And then we can just pass in, I want to pass in 2 things. First is the post user, as well as the user ID, and you'll see why in a second. Then here in the post card, we can specify the user ID, which of type app user ID model, and the post user, which of the type mini user there. We can then take both of these and like this. Now just a little tidbit for those of you who don't know. You might be wondering, what is the difference between these two right here? This one right here is an optional field, meaning when we create this one right here, we do not have to specify x2. This one here is a required field, but it can be an empty value. So you'll notice here, if we go down, this is giving us an error because it wants us to specify x. Even if x is simply undefined, it wants us to specify x. So that's the difference. We do not have to specify x2, even though we can if we want to. But x needs to be specified. And this is just in case you didn't know. That's the difference between these two, and if you see me using them, then you know why. Okay, now that we get the data, let's first display the user details. So here in the avatar, let's go and say post user dot username. And in here, let's go post user dot username. Now if we load up here, you'll notice we get @nick, and here @nick. Let's log out for a second and create a new user. So we go here to /login. Actually, I want to create a user. So here we go, Jack, and is at gmail.com. And the username is going to be I am the one and only Jack. First name will be Jack, last name will be wow, and then password will just be their regular password. We sign up, the account has been created, and we did not actually navigate to the home page, so you might want to change that because I'm pretty sure we also logged in. So we go to the home page. We actually did not log in, so you might want to log in after sign up, and we'll actually implement that soon enough. So let's go here to /login, jack@gmail.com, password, we go login, password, we go login. And now if I create a new post and I can see next post and I go here, this is my first post as Jack, we post that, then you'll notice like what the heck is going on here. You can't even see that name. In that case, you actually want to limit the text a little bit. So here in the avatar, we can actually go and just say limit text, and we specify we want to limit it to 7 characters. That will make sure that at least you can see some of it. If you want it to be bigger, you can limit it to more, so then it's even bigger, but then it will limit most of them. So it depends on what you prefer. Limit text is also from the meteorjs utils. You can copy paste the code if you don't use the package. Alright, and in here of course there's a very long name. You might also want to just put a limit on how long this name can be. And before we continue, let's fix that sign up issue. So let's go here and say sign up page. And after you created your account, you want to, of course, log in. So let's just go meteor.login with password, cleaned email, password. Of course, we can get an error, which is of type meteor.error. And we can just say, do we have a logging in? Yeah, we do. Set logging in, true, or I mean false, because we're not logging in anymore. And of course, you can set it here to true, but nothing's really changing that much at the moment. And then if an error has occurred, return error response, error could not log in. You could also specify that the account was created but just couldn't log in. That's up to you. And then again, we just navigate to public routes.home.path. You might want to change this to the browse page, so .browse.path, but it's fine. Okay, so now we'll navigate you to the actual page. So let's actually test it out. Then here we'll go kali@linux.com, Kali Linux, and then just Kali and password. Now if I say sign up, it will sign me up as Kali Linux and log me in and then take me to the home page. Now I can say this is my post. I post that, and there we go. So currently there are 8 posts here, with Yabba Dabba Doo being at the bottom. Let's post just 3 more. And then 1 more. Yabba Dabba Doo should now no longer be there because we've reached our limit, so it won't fetch anything extra. Okay, now finally, to end of this tutorial, we want to do one more thing. We want to allow the user to at least have a delete button. We're not going to implement it yet, but to have a delete button to delete their post if it's their post. So instead of post card, underneath post actions, we can go if post user dot underscore ID is the same, user ID, not underscore ID, that would not work. That user ID is the same as the user ID that has been passed in, then post actions dot push, and we want to push a pop confirm that includes a button that itself includes a deleted outline. Now this pop confirm will have a title which says, are you sure you want to delete this post? Then here we have type of text and then just danger as well to make it red. And if we save it, if I own a post, I can now see the deleted button or the delete button, but I cannot see it for those who are not me. So if I want to, I can click it and say, oh, sure, I want to delete this post. I say, no. But do I? Let's say, okay, doesn't do anything, but it is there, and that's the important part. And that's that. We are finally done with this part of the course. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope I can see you all again in the next Meteor.js tutorial.